Welcome to the Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where three guys are watching their way through Sex and the City for the first time ever, mostly.
Now, listen, if you're just tuning in, we were getting our sea legs in these first few episodes, okay? We've gotten way better. We've gotten way better guests. When we first started, we never thought that Kristen Davis would say on Twitter, "I seriously love you guys."
That's right.
And your podcast. We've had on a director from the show. We've had on incredible Instagram influencers. We've had on Amy Lee, the lead singer from Evanescence. We've had on actors from the show. And when we started this, we were just messing around, like watching the show together. And it's become so much bigger and better than what we thought it would be. So if you're tired of this episode and you don't love it, John, do you have like some good episodes
Absolutely.
They should check out?
We have some great episodes that you should check out. The ones we strongly recommend, Season 1, Episode 9, or Season 4, Episode 6. We had on Dan Clay or Carrie Bradshaw, drag queen who dresses up like Carrie Bradshaw. Hilarious guest, great guy. Also, Season 3, Episode 17. We had on Ozark from Netflix, the actor Mark Menchaca. A very serendipitous and hilarious episode if you listen to that one. And lastly, Season 4, Episode 1, we had Akilah Hughes, a hilarious comedian and a friend of the pod.
Yeah, we've done over 50 of these episodes now, and we're still going. And so there's going to be one that you're going to look through and you're going to love. So don't just judge us on these first couple ones, even though those ones are really fun too.
Yeah, no one wants to be judged.
Hey, we don't want to be judged. We just want you to enjoy the journey of Sex and the City with us. Also, we are on Instagram at the Bradshaw Boys. We're on Twitter at the Bradshaw Boys. Let us know what you think. Follow us. We put up a lot of funny social Sex and the City memes, and we interact with you guys and love to hear what you think. Follow the podcast on Spotify or iTunes, and let's get into it.
Enjoy.
Thanks for listening.
Woo. We definitely need to talk about where we are in the show because I love the show. I just don't know a lot about it.
I think that's a really good thing to talk about because I think I give off more knowledge than I actually have.
Okay, so yeah, because I see you as an expert.
Yeah. So we should talk about all this.
I've never seen a single one.
Yet you've done how many tours? Sex and the City tours?
Don't say yet. I want to surprise.
You're now listening to The Bradshaw Boys, a podcast where three relatively grown men binge the iconic HBO series Sex and the City. So dust off those DVDs and grab yourself a white wine or even a Cosmopolitan and settle in. Take it away, boys.
All right, Bradshaw Boys, let's clink our glasses and start, right?
Yep.
Ready?
Bradshaw Boys. Okay.
Well, welcome to the first official Bradshaw Boys podcast.
1, 2, 3. Bradshaw Boys.
We started as a barbershop quartet, but then we're only three of us, so we decided to start a podcast about watching Sex and the City. Which brings us to our intro. Do we want to talk? How about we do introductions and then just get into what this is actually going to be?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Our name, our relationship to the show.
Okay. I'll go first.
Mm-hmm.
My name's Cory Kevin, and my relationship to the show is I started watching the show Sex and the City through an old girlfriend's DVD set, and then eventually years later realized I had my roommate's HBO Go password, and so I would just watch the show when I was really bored on Sunday nights. And my real entree into it was at some point I was sitting on the couch drinking red wine, eating dark chocolate, watching Sex and the City, and I realized that in a movie I would be my own female doppelganger. That's my entree into the show.
So you're
I love the show.
You're so far you're the resident expert, 1 for 1.
Great to start off a podcast with choking and coughing. Excuse me. No, I'm not a resident expert.
It sounds like you're caught in a lie.
Excuse me. No. No, I'm not a resident expert. Here's the thing. With all that love and admiration for it, I think I've really only skimmed the surface. I bet in total I've seen 4 to 5 episodes.
Wait, what?
And one movie. I've seen the first movie in the theater, but I think I've seen like 7 episodes, but I've seen a lot of like dipping in and out of episodes, and at one point I was like, I'm gonna watch this whole show, and I only made it through a few, and then I skipped around and I like watched an episode from a later season, so I know story points. This is how I am with like most information in my life. I skim a lot of things.
I've been walking around thinking that you're this expert.
I agreed to do this show because I was under the impression that you had watched every episode multiple times.
No.
Knew every character.
No.
Okay.
There's not many shows that's the case with me. I've only watched a few shows all the way through once. I've never watched a show through all the way through twice, but definitely not this show.
All right.
I haven't seen much of this show.
That was a surprise to me. When we were initially talking, I was assumed that you were could have written a book on Sex and the City with your knowledge.
I could write a book on Sex and the City. It would be it'd be a lot of fan fiction of just stuff that I've made up about it.
All right. So
anyone can write a book, by the way.
You're still the resident expert, despite having only seen 4 or 5 so far. One for one.
All right. Well, let's get into who you guys are, and then we'll talk about our mission.
Okay.
I'll go next.
Okay.
I think my name is John Sieber, and my introduction to Sex in the City was also through a girlfriend at the time. I'd heard murmurs of the show in high school when everyone was watching it. I was definitely not allowed to watch it back then. I think the idea of watching that show when I was younger at that age would have been something that my parents would not have approved. So I was in college dating a girl who, even though we were raised similarly, had exposure to the show because she loved it, and we watched it on. You remember before Netflix that you could stream shows, but through like the cable providers.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
It was like before HBO Go. I don't even know what
on
exactly.
demand.
Yeah, it was on demand. So I was really into Ali G show, and I would watch that, and she would always make me turn it off and watch Sex and the City. And it started as I would just kind of see it in passing, and then I was like, This is surprising. This is interesting.
I'm enjoying myself.
Ooh.
And I probably with her, I would say in the background, I've probably been present through every episode, but I've probably only watched 7.
Okay.
And I recently got married, and my wife is a huge Sex and the City fan. And so once again, it's on in our house all of the time.
Wow.
And that's when I found myself enjoying it. And I was home alone one night scrolling through the possible Netflix options, and I found myself going over to HBO.
It's on Netflix?
No, it's on HBO.
Okay.
I went over to HBO and found myself alone one night enjoying some wine, watching Sex and the City. And
Wow, we're more alike than I thought.
You guys are definitely far above I haven't seen a single episode. I know all the characters' names. I know a lot about the locations around New York City, because and this is how we started talking about it the night we came up with this idea, is because I, for years, gave Sex and the City tours around New York City, and I've never seen a single episode.
How disappointed are the people if they hear this podcast that we're on your tours? Do you think I was angry?
No, I was open with them about them. If I told them we're on like a Greenwich Village tour and I'm like, I'm just making stuff up or whatever, they would be mad if it was a historical tour. But for this, it's like you do about a half hour, you get the stories in, you're like, so I'm taking you to some big spots, and then as fans, they know everything, so you just dip in and you're just like, so full disclosure, I've never seen it, and then they take over. So then you take them to the spots, and I'm like, so apparently this is where Miranda had a date with Steve, and they're like, oh my gosh, and then they want to tell you about it. So it actually worked as a nice little charming thing. And by the way, tortilla flats, that's where I was just talking about.
Oh, really? See, I didn't know that.
Miranda and Steve.
Did they get blackout drunk in that episode and not remember the next day? Because
I think maybe they had a breakup there, or they
I'm excited to see that.
I am too.
It's funny. So when people would just be like, Steve, I'd be like, I don't know who Steve is. I don't know. But I do know that him and Miranda went on a date at Tortilla Flats, which is still around over in the meatpacking district.
Oh, yeah. I've been there before. I've been to Tortilla Flats. I actually really love Tortilla Flats, but this isn't a food podcast.
We need to do a podcast at Tortilla Flats.
We have many things planned like that. We'll do that. Wait, hold on. You never said who you are, though.
I'm Kevin James Doyle.
Okay.
Kevin Doyle is an actor in Game of Thrones, and Kevin James is the zookeeper.
And
so I have to be Kevin James Doyle.
He's also PBMC, right?
What's
Paul
that?
Blart Mall Cop.
Yeah.
Yes.
Paul Blart Mall Cop.
PBMC.
So I've never seen an episode. You guys are both. I feel like clearly what brought us all together is that we wanted an excuse to watch every single episode,
Yes.
which is what we're going to do.
That's exactly what we're going to do. And that's the whole point of this podcast, is that we all kind of realized we should get together and watch every episode together, because we all had, I feel like we'll talk about this in length at some point, but we all had a night that we went out, and me and John realized that we had mutual admiration for the show.
And I thought you were an expert.
And which you just found out that I'm clearly not.
Oh boy.
I'm a great liar, apparently. But yeah, and then we were like, oh, we should do this. And then you brought up the fact that you hadn't, you'd never seen them but done tours. And then we were like, what if we tried to, the original thing was like, why don't we try to watch them all in one sitting? And we did the math and figured out that I think that'd be something like 41 hours or something. And I feel like we were game to do it. And we were like, well, maybe we could live stream that.
We'll still do it over a weekend sometime.
Sure.
Once we finish these.
Once we watch it through, we'll just do it again, but all at once.
I will say that one of the reasons why the conversation came up and why I've avoided watching it is because I've always kind of decided to hate it and then realized I've never watched it.
There's a pride thing with Sex and the City.
Yeah.
It's like, it's your friend who's never seen Star Wars.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like, why have you never seen Star Wars? Well, it's because I've never seen it. I want to be that guy.
Yeah.
There's some of that with Sex and the City too.
Yeah.
And it's a good show. And that's why we're doing this podcast. We want you, the listener, to join us in this journey.
Exactly.
If you've never seen Sex and the City, if you are a male or female who was afraid of Sex and the City, didn't want to touch it, didn't want to come near it, we're opening up the ship. We want you to come on board and watch these with us.
And we live in New York City and have for 9 years. And how long have you?
12 and a half years.
About 8.
8 years. So I'm not saying we're experts, but I mean, I know where Tortilla Flats is, where Miranda and Steve had a date.
Yeah,
so.
exactly. Hey, listen, if they say that if you live in New York for 10 years, you're a New Yorker, but if you know where Tortilla Flats is, you're the mayor. That's what they say. That's what I've heard they say.
That's how Ed Koch
That's
became
right
mayor.
next to the.
That's how Ed Koch became mayor.
That's next to the "Forget About It" sign, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it is. It's a longer sign.
Yeah.
It's like one of those green road signs with white writing. It's a lot longer. But
Do you know where Tortilla Flats is? Forget
about it. And then they
You
just
do?
stick a knish and a piece of pizza in your mouth, and they move your head back and forth to chew those things for you. That's how it happens.
Should we watch episode 1?
I think we should watch episode 1. We should watch episode 1. I feel like, okay, so you guys have seen The Wire. Have you seen The Wire?
Yeah.
Have you seen The Wire?
I haven't.
All right,
I've
let's
tried-
abandon
I've
this
tried-
podcast for watching. I'm just kidding.
I've tried to watch it. So I have narcolepsy. I'm sure we'll talk about this a
Oh,
little more in the podcast.
I didn't know that.
I have narcolepsy.
See, a lot of this, let me interrupt you real quick and say that a lot of this podcast, the three of us are good friends.
Yeah.
And we know each other pretty well, I would say.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of this podcast is the same way that like you go on a road trip with some people or you live in an apartment with some people. You're taking a journey together. And so like this is three friends who know each other really well but are about to embark on something. And we're going to get to know each other and the show a lot better.
We're going to make
this.
discoveries.
We're getting on this ship. We're getting on this ship, like you said.
So I do have narcolepsy, which isn't as bad as other people have it. If I get really tired, I can't not fall asleep. And every time I've watched The Wire, I've tried it 3 times.
Yeah.
And people that I trust so much in their opinions on what is good TV have told me to watch it. 3 for 3, falling asleep like within 12 minutes. So I need to figure out a way to stay awake through it.
Well, quick note about The Wire. This podcast is not about The Wire, but quick note about that. You got to make it through the 3rd episode.
Okay.
And so that's why. But the reason I bring up The Wire is because a friend of mine told me years ago when I was starting The Wire, he just looked at me and he goes, man, I just want to grab you by the shirt like a college freshman and shake you and say, you have no idea what you're about to encounter and you'll never get to watch The Wire ever again for the first time. And I feel like we're about to go watch the first episode together. We'll never be able to do this for the first time.
It's a special. It honestly is special. I've withheld seeing that like clear box set everywhere and just judging people and girlfriends and stuff, being like, oh, bad taste. I'm never gonna watch that. This is where that ends. This is where it ends now, and I'm like, you know what? I'm opening up myself to a new world. 4 ladies are about to come into my life.
Whoa, bold statement. A little racy, yeah.
Ooh, a little racy and peeked out there on the mic because of my laugh. So.
Yeah, you went hard on that one. Yeah, I think that I feel like we're about to like jump off a cliff together, and I feel like for the listeners, if you've seen it, watch it again with us. If you've never seen it, jump in, no judgments, and we should all do it together and just. I don't know. We're about to set sail from
let them come into
New York Harbor.
So
grab a Cosmo, boys. Let's go.
Grab a Cosmo, and we're gonna be drinking white wine. I know at some point we'll do Cosmos. We're gonna go pop a bottle of white wine, and we will talk to you guys after we watch the first episode.
All right.
Sayonara.
See you soon.
Episode 1: Sex and the City. At a birthday party for 30-something Miranda, Carrie and her friends vow to stop worrying about finding the perfect male and start having sex like men. Carrie has several encounters with tycoon heartthrob Mr. Big, while Miranda starts dating nice guy Skipper Johnston. Charlotte goes on a date with Capote Duncan, but when she tells him she won't have sex with him, he goes to a club and winds up going home with Samantha. Now, back to the boys.
And the Bradshaw Boys are back.
The Bradshaw Boys are back. The Bradshaw Boys are back in town. The Bradshaw Boys are back in town. The Bradshaw Boys are... The Brads are back. The Brads are back.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
End of the episode.
Wow.
Such a good line.
Let's just, for our listeners, and by the way, you just heard us talking before, and then you probably heard a musical interlude, and now we're back. So if you didn't, go find it on YouTube and watch the pilot episode of Sex and the City, created by Darren Star.
Buckle up for some of the most amazing
in old Texas
made-up names ever.
What was the best one?
I mean,
the best
Capote
one.
Duncan?
Capote Duncan.
For sure.
Capote Duncan.
Right off.
Who were his parents, and what kind of professor literary psychopaths who abused their child, named a computer Duncan.
Listen, here's the thing: is when Capote Duncan was gallivanting around New York City in the late '90s, it was crazy. Everyone was talking about Capote Duncan.
And there's one thing that he needs, and it's to have sex tonight. That's it.
It's like, I gotta have sex tonight. So wait, the episode was called Episode 1 Pilot. Is that what it was called?
I think it's called Sex in the City.
It's called
Okay.
Sex in the City. Yeah.
Which is great because
Which is what is Capote. That's what Capote Duncan needs.
sex.
They should have just called it
In the
Capote
city.
Duncan.
I wish they would have. Here's the thing. I don't know if it happened, but I don't think it did. But it is a travesty that there's not a spin-off series about Capote Duncan. I think it was called Wall Street, the movie.
It's not. And
The Adventures of Capote and Skipper.
It's called I Need to Have Sex Tonight.
Capote and Skipper, naughty and nice.
Capote and Skipper are the real-life Lilo and Stitch, right?
Yes.
So wait, who?
Okay.
So
let's just get into it.
he was in the. Okay, so the episode starts. The first few things that I noticed first is just that it's not shot in widescreen.
No, it's shot in 4:3 because it came out in 98. Is that what it was? 98, 97? We'll check on that.
I didn't notice that.
It's shot in
I don't
4:3.
notice things like that.
Yeah.
Well, we're so used to it now. Like any TV you watch is in widescrreen.
Yeah.
So it
and
made
all
sense.
your
but
phones and everything, every screen you watch is on widescreen.
it's like, what was this show made on? Instagram?
Nice.
Because it's a square. I was kidding.
So it came out in 97, 98? 98. It came out in 98. We've got confirmation on that. So it was in 98. So it was 4:3. So that was the first thing you noticed.
What was Sarah Jessica Parker in before this? She was in
The Witch movie.
Yeah.
That's all I know. I don't know a lot about movies.
I don't know what the
Hocus
Witch movie
Pocus.
Is that what she was
No,
in? Is
Hocus Pocus was, yeah. I mean, this is clearly landmark for her. Now looking at it after,
this
but
was
this
her-
was
Yeah.
I wonder if it was like weird at the time. If it was like, oh, you're doing an HBO show.
What was Capote Duncan in prior to this?
We'll check on that as well. I feel like
It was so. What people don't know, the first impressions is it was in 4-3, and
Sure.
also that this is actually a spinoff from Capote Duncan. It was.
this is a spinoff of Capote Duncan's college years about him being a football player. Yeah, so what you noticed... Well, actually, I'll say this. I said this before we watched it. I hadn't seen the pilot. I thought I had.
I hadn't either.
I've seen, I think, the second or third episode, but I'd never seen the pilot. You hadn't either.
No,
So-
my wife was telling me about something that we'll get to, comparing Mr. Big to Donald Trump. So I knew some
That was
things
in there.
in the pilot, but I had never seen it.
Wow. So
Yeah,
none of us had seen the pilot.
No.
I didn't.
Maiden Voyage.
Maiden Voyage. I didn't realize that Mr. Big, just because obviously culturally over the years you hear, oh, Mr. Big, Mr. Big. I thought that Mr. Big would have, if I would have assumed before, he got introduced in season 4 or something when it's like, oh, we need her to kind of sort of land on a lover. Like she's gallivanted around, but now we need to find her, like her partner, and then Christopher Noth comes in. I didn't realize he's episode 1, sort
We'll
of
see.
like,
We'll
Episode
see
1,
what
20
happens.
minutes in. Land on a Lover, also coincidentally, the second spinoff movie that
For
Capote
Capote
Duncan's in. Land on
Land
a
on
Lover.
a Lover.
He's got to
Mr.
land on a lover tonight.
Mr. Big shoots down Samantha hard.
Hard.
yeah, because he wants something more.
Well, he only smokes cohibas, and she was offering him some of that Dominican shit. And
He didn't want it.
Mr. Big.
No, she offered him a Honduran.
Oh, he only smokes cohibas.
He only smokes
I
cohibas.
smoked a cohiba in high school. Like when I graduated high school and was going off to college, my friend had one. He got it out, and I was like 10 minutes into it, and I was like, hold on. And I puked over my porch.
He's like, hey, Kevin, are you puking? And you turned with puke on your mouth, and you just said,
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Can't wait to get to that. Oh, just one thing that I think is great about this is that I've thought this before when I watched Sex and the City, but like all the women, I don't know if they said this, but I think all the women, all the female characters, the main characters of the show are in their mid-30s at this point, and so they're talking a lot about like men in their 30s having sex like a man. That's like a huge thing, but like. It's an empowering show for women in that they're all these single professional women in their mid-30s are trying to date, and it is just these like caricatures of men that are just, they're like, oh yeah, man, I work out at the gym and I'm in my 30s and I can do what I want in New York.
Yeah.
There's such cartoons of these guys.
Yeah.
And then there's Skip.
And you know what? I want a more three-dimensional vision of who Capote Duncan is.
I want to build that. I hope that
He's lived 42 years in this city, and he's done a lot. Not just wanting sex, or maybe that's it. Maybe that's all there is to Capote Duncan.
I think all Capote Duncan needs at the end of the day is to have sex tonight.
Tonight,
I think that it is interesting having lived here long enough and have obviously like they all have way more money than us and they live a different life, but I also feel like it was way more like this show is about like the art world and like PR and like all the like I feel like watching it I related a lot to it, and then there's also way more of a capital now on just like Brooklyn and being a hipster and all that stuff, so it's like
Yeah.
I feel like when you think of New York now, the Wall Street and like art parties are less of why people move to New York, or maybe that's just not my
is that
life.
because you're not part of that life? Like, is it because you're not in high rises and art galleries and clubs like Chaos?
Yeah.
But instead, you're
How do
hanging
you
out
think
at
chaos was spelled? KAOS?
for sure.
Okay.
For sure.
Not- it
I would
wasn't spelled
wager a lot of money
CHO.
that
It
it
had
starts
to be-
with it's a K.
There had to be some sort of like umlaut or something in there too.
And I do just want to say this podcast is brought to you by Club Chaos.
Club Chaos,
Love
the
Cha-
hottest club in Midtown Manhattan where you can have sex tonight.
Ladies and gentlemen, this podcast is brought to you by Stamps.com and Club Chaos.
I believe
Chaos.
they said Chaos was on.
Oh no, it's
is
on
it still
West
there?
Broadway and is it a real club?
I don't know.
At the time, clubs never last that long.
It's interesting because we all have lived in New York for a combined 25.
Who lived in
years.
Manhattan? I've never lived in Manhattan.
I lived in Manhattan.
I've lived in Manhattan.
I lived in Manhattan for 6.5 years.
Where'd you live in Manhattan?
I lived in 4 apartments. I lived at 109th in Amsterdam.
Not Manhattan.
That is Manhattan.
It is Manhattan.
It is
but it's
Manhattan.
not Manhattan.
I did not live downtown Manhattan. Okay, here's a question.
I'd be willing to- I'd
What would
be
you
willing to
say
say-
about the Upper East Side? That's Manhattan.
It is. I would say that if you met someone and for 2 weeks they're like, yeah, I live in Manhattan. And then after a while, like it came up in conversation that they lived at like 171st in Washington Heights, then you'd be like, totally true. I wouldn't necessarily trust that person. Felt a little duped.
Yeah, I also I would disagree with that, but I would also say that 109 and 171st are also two different things. This is not a geographical podcast, and people are checking out.
I'm
I
making a
disagree.
prediction
I
here.
think
I'm
it's
going to
great.
come in with the prediction that at some point in Sex and the City, that they're going to have someone living in your location,
that will say it's not
and they're
Manhattan.
going to have
That's probably
this
true.
same debate, or one of them will be turned off by the fact that they live there because it's not, as Kevin said, Manhattan.
That's I 100%.
It's safe
agree
money.
with you.
It's safe money for sure.
I agree with you. I agree with you, and I do think I will agree to say that I have not lived below 100th Street in Manhattan, and most people that live in cool Manhattan would say, "Oh, you don't live in that." Although these days, it's different. Where like people live in Harlem, and Harlem is in the past like 8 years or whatever.
Mhm.
It's like a quote unquote cooler neighborhood in that sense, and so
Yeah.
people might have a different opinion of that.
Yeah. No,
And I say that as someone who lived in Harlem for 5 years, and people are like, "You don't live in Manhattan. You live at 145th Street." And this is my axe to grind. I lived in Manhattan.
you absolutely did. And I'm not
patronize me.
I'm not a supporter of that argument. It's more other people that I know that it's like when you say Manhattan,
You're not a supporter of that argument, but you did place your hand on my knee and patronizingly start this entire debate.
yeah, you
That's
pulled
my
you
minute.
pulled a Capote Duncan
You
on
pulled a
him.
Capote Duncan
listen, where's Capote Duncan live? Tribeca?
wherever he can
He's for
have
sure-
sex
he's for sure.
tonight.
So I lived in 46 in between 8th and 9th. I lived in Hell's Kitchen for a year.
Ladies and gentlemen, that is located in Manhattan.
That isn't Manhattan.
Yeah,
It is in Manhattan.
and yeah, I don't really have anything. There was nothing. We're just saying whether or not we lived in Manhattan, right? Was there any other
No, it was
talking
just
points on that?
it was just that it was like it's interesting watching the show and then seeing it's in New York City, but there's so many different New York cities,
Right.
and I never really considered. I was like, oh yeah, this is like rich art gallery. Like
I would also
higher,
say that you keep saying art gallery. I don't know if I pulled art gallery a ton from that. I pulled more like money, finance. Like I don't know. Like Club Chaos didn't seem like an art gallery.
I have a
thing.
question. So out of everything that we saw in that episode, what was the least Manhattan? And I did air quotes. And what was the most Manhattan thing that you saw? I think by far the most Manhattan thing that I saw
Yeah.
was when Miranda was waiting in line at one of those like skeezy delis, like holding the
You said least?
No, that was the most
That's
Manhattan
most.
thing
I
by
agree.
far.
I agree.
So I'm 6'4", and so a lot of what I gauge an accurate.
What that was is like where you go weigh the food, right? It's
Yeah,
just
it's
all
one of
that-
those.
Yeah,
But the first thing I noticed, other than the Twin Towers being in the opening credits,
Right.
was the girl that she's writing about, Elizabeth. She's in the back of a cab and has like 8 or 9 feet of legroom, and every time I get into a cab, I'm like squeezing my big ass legs in the cab, bruises on my knees, and I'm like, that right there, that doesn't exist. That little lady sitting back there with 10 feet of space, and I know there's luggage and a camera back there, but that's not Manhattan.
I think that's true. But one thing that I did notice about that was I noticed how different cabs were, because now all cabs are these like hybrid Toyotas, and up until like 2008 or 9, cabs were Crown Victorias, which had way more space because they had giant bench seats in the back, and they were like gas guzzling cabs, and those don't exist anymore. And back then they were even older school Crown Vics that might have had, they're like old cop cars, so they might have had even more space back then. So they were like it was like a different, I noticed that a lot.
This is Manhattan before I was even in Manhattan.
You are right though that the cabs now, not the Nissan ones or
There's
the
no
Toyotas,
room.
but the
They
ones
were
that were
so
just
much tighter.
the car. Yeah, there was. It's like you get in and yeah.
What about you, Kevin? What was
The
the most and least Manhattan or New York thing that you saw?
I think the most New York, most Manhattan. I think just people. One thing that doesn't age, like their fashion or certain things like age, but one thing that's like when you just see a giant rush of people walking down the street going to work, you're like, oh, that's a thing that like will never change. That's just always what it is. And then when it's just like these are like women in New York with when she was doing that voiceover, and it's like, oh, that's the exact same thing now. If you go to like 6th Avenue at 10 a.m. That's everyone with their coffee,
right,
going to do the exact same thing, the exact same jobs. And it's like, oh yeah, publishing has changed. People don't go to bookstores anymore. But it's like that type of thing. It's still the exact same thing. Only maybe people.
The rat race. I mean, the rat race.
The whole
just the crowds of people. Migrating towards their office.
Yeah.
Hungover, holding coffees.
Yeah.
Disheveled business clothes.
Yeah.
That'll never change.
Yeah. That and then the main. Just watching people smoke inside is like insane.
Yeah.
That's so fascinating to me about this show, and I love it. The people smoking inside everywhere.
I guess it would have been every show. When did that law? We should find out when that law was. But what a great change that I don't think anyone really pushed against. I'm sure at the time there were people pushing against it, but what a great change that it's like you could just smoke inside anywhere.
Yeah,
is crazy.
Yeah. There's like a ton of smoking. One thing that I thought was very Manhattan was that I think it's Miranda or Carrie, but they're at a coffee shop. No, it's the British woman at the beginning when she like tells Carrie her story. They're at a coffee shop, but it doesn't look like a cool coffee shop. It looks just like a diner with coffee with those things that you pour sugar out of that have the little flip lid where you can just pour tons of sugar. But
sometimes people put rice in those. Have you know what I'm?
It's to dry out the sugar because rice absorbs water
and fix iPhones.
It fixes iPhones.
God, that makes a lot of. I'm learning a lot tonight.
I know, right? This is an informational podcast.
Wait, so you've only seen 5 episodes of Sex and the City?
I just know a lot about diner sugar things, but I noticed that to me that is a very kind of old school Manhattan thing, is coffee shops like that. And now in Manhattan, coffee shops are like good coffee. Like it's like a pour over blue bottle Stumptown. But that was just like a random Irving Farm. They started it all. But this is not a podcast about coffee.
Shout out to our roasters.
Thank you, Irving Farm. Thank you very much for your beans. But like that coffee shop I noticed, because that always seemed like a Manhattan, New York. Then you go to a diner and you just get like coffee.
Get like a 99 cents coffee. Now there's the $18 coffee in Mystery City. It's crazy.
Is it really $18?
There is an $18 cup of coffee in my office, and it's I got it because I had one of those loyalty cards, and I got a free coffee, and so I just walked down there, and I was like, I'll try the Purple Geisha Supreme Deluxe Edition. And they're like, that'll be $18. And I slid across the little wood coin, and they like kind of looked at it. They brought it out, and then the very next day, there's a little sign there that said, "Free coffees only for coffees $4 or less."
Dude, that's great.
That's awesome.
That's such a baller move.
Breaking the system there, like beating the getting the free coffee and taking it down.
Yeah, that's great. I love that.
One of my proudest achievements.
That's a great achievement.
What? How was it? Was it good?
The guy who gave it to me, he said like this is like it's like getting a really nice drink or like a really expensive bottle of wine, and it was like that. When I was drinking it, it was very aromatic and like rich, and it's definitely not something you could have every single day, and I don't think I'll ever get it again. But it was definitely an experience that I didn't have to pay for, so it was nice. But
how many people would love to yell at you for doing that, and for being like, who would ever do that? That spend $12 on Coors Light at at a baseball game or a concert all the time.
Yeah,
and it's like, well, yeah, the whole coffee shop thing, I feel like there's just so many like just new cultural things that I feel like we're always going to be bumping into on this, because it's like it's a show that this would be the equivalent to in 1999 us watching like Welcome Back, Kotter. You know, it's how old is this? It's 20 years old. Oh, the 20-year anniversary will be coming up in June.
Yeah.
Of the airing of this. So we're 20 years old. We're not 20. We'll obviously do a big release, something big on our.
Oh yeah, That's the episode where we'll have the 4 women on.
Yeah.
We'll have all the actresses on and Darren Star. It'll be huge. It's going to be gigantic.
What about?
Actually, we're only going to have on Capote Duncan.
That's what. Yeah.
That's the only guy that's going to be. That's
John looked
the
at,
only guest.
John looked
I
at,
had to look at my notes. What about Capote
Duncan?
Can we try to make a goal for the rest of this podcast to somehow bring him up every single episode?
I think we have to at this point.
The Capote, but it was a spinoff podcast.
Yeah.
Why don't you? Do you just want to? Someone, or we'll do it together, just explain what happened in the episode. Just go through, let's just do the plot of what happened with all the characters and everything.
Yeah.
Because it was, I mean, I feel like we're so used to seeing pilots now because even when this show was on, you would just watch whatever's on TV, but you wouldn't always get to start at the beginning. I feel like we're so accustomed to watching pilots now and know it's a pilot.
Right.
But I'm like, I mean, definitely didn't seem like, oh, this is like they didn't find their footing yet. I was like, this is pretty great.
Yeah.
I thought it was good.
Yeah. I mean, I think, okay, so setting up, and let's just all jump in here. It's like, so it starts out with this British woman in a cab with way too much room in the back seat.
So much room.
So much luggage also. And she comes into the city. She's British. Was she a writer or something like that?
English. She's English and a journalist major.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. She comes in.
Her name is Elizabeth.
She meets a guy who seems like a powerful, he seemed like a lawyer or some sort of like finance type guy.
Wall Street guy. He made $2 million a year.
Yeah. They hit it off at a party where he says, "I think I know you." And she plays hard to get, and then he makes some this doesn't matter, but he basically gets her, and she's like, "I think you do know me." They have a wild romance, and then they start looking at places together, which that to me was the most un-New York thing, is how that was a Victorian house that they were touring around. But that probably just shows how much money I have, that I've never looked at a place like that.
If that dude 20 years ago is making $2 million a year, and maybe that's the move too, that it's like, I do this and now I get my wife and I buy the townhouse or whatever.
That's true. Yeah. But then they're going to go have dinner with his parents after this wild romance, and then he calls and says, "My mom's sick," and then he doesn't call her for 2 weeks, and then he basically just like lets her go, and then she finds Carrie Bradshaw.
Wait, did they ever resolve, like, is his mom okay?
I don't think so. We should check in. I wonder if that ever comes. That's got to come back up in season 3.
I can't believe they didn't resolve that.
I feel really
I'm pretty
bad
sure that his mom got Duncaned, if you know what I mean.
Wait, his mom's not okay because she ended up with Truman. I mean,
Capote.
Truman Capote Duncan.
Capote Duncan.
Truman Capote Duncan. Oh man,
in cold blood.
In cold blood. You're gonna say that? Well, she went down the road.
She was on her period.
That's in cold. Is that what In Cold Blood's about?
No, it's about a murder.
I know. I'm not an idiot. Come on. Listen, I know that I think I lived in Manhattan at some point, but I'm not a dummy. All right. Okay, so that beginning part happens, and that brings us to Carrie Bradshaw.
And she asks, she's writing a column on women who have sex like men, and exploring what that looks like, how different women have sex, what they're expecting from sex,
right?
And is it possible for women to have sex like a man, and what that means to have sex like a man, right. And brought up a lot of interesting questions.
It did. And then that brings us to this thing that I think we should point out here, but maybe not spend a lot of time on, but it brings us to this run of people that are speaking to camera. Most of them are guys sweating, working out. They look like they're in a 1980s Reebok commercial.
Yeah.
And they're talking, but the speaking to camera thing
doesn't happen at a certain point.
It's like, I think it's only season 1 or maybe season 1 and 2. I also wondered this today.
Because even Carrie Bradshaw, she looks at the camera.
It made me think about High Fidelity, the John Cusack movie.
Yeah.
Cameron Crowe film.
The Jack Black movie.
The Jack Black, oof, yeah. But there's a lot of like her speaking to camera and these weird interviews to camera.
It's how you first meet Miranda and Charlotte. I think.
Yeah.
And Samantha.
I think Samantha's just at the table
Oh yeah, at the
when
birthday
at
party.
the birthday. But it's for sure how you meet Miranda. She's at the buffet line,
Yeah.
and then Samantha, I think, or
She's-
Charlotte's at work or something like
Right.
that.
That's why I thought of art dealer, because they go to she's an art dealer, it says
Oh.
below, and the English girl and the guy are at an art.
There is a lot. You're right.
Yeah.
There is a lot of art in the episode because then that guy's got art in his apartment. So they, and also I believe Capote Duncan's middle name is Art. Capote Art Duncan. That's his middle name. That's his full name, Capote Art Duncan Jr. Because his father was Capote Art Duncan
Senior.
Senior. Exactly. Also, speaking of surnames, did anyone notice that Miranda is an Esquire?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because she's a lawyer.
She's a lawyer.
So yeah, she's an Esquire.
Mhm.
She's a smart lady.
What's an Esquire mean?
I think it's a magazine. It was Esquire. I don't know what is an Esquire
I
mean
think
that you're. Does it mean that you're a lawyer?
I think it means
ESQ?
yeah,
Were
Esquire.
you asking me a question? ESQ? Is that Spanish?
Wait, what are you guys saying though?
I'm saying it said her name, Miranda. Miranda. What is her last name?
Miranda Esquire?
Or Miranda something Esquire.
You're saying it's like PhD or something, right?
Yes.
Yes,
I believe
it's,
so.
It's a sir. It's not a surname. Sorry, I said that. It's a title. It's like
I didn't realize. What's that mean?
it means. Well, I don't know. That's what we're asking.
I think her name's Miranda Hobbs. Right?
Miranda Hobbs Esquire.
Esquire.
Miranda
And
Hobbs,
so
comma Esquire.
It would just be like Miranda Hobbs, PhD, if she were a doctor.
Exactly.
Okay.
Are we dumbasses? Is this something
I think
that everyone...
there's going to be a lot of things that come up in this podcast that either we are dumbasses or we're just learning.
which
I don't know.
is fine.
That's okay if we are.
I know the lawyer I use. His name is blank blank Esquire.
Okay, so
Okay.
then that just means that's got to mean they're a lawyer.
But other than that, I remember that's how Bill and Ted introduced themselves.
Bill S. Preston
Bill
Esquire.
S. Preston Esquire. He's clearly not a lawyer.
He's not a
because-
lawyer, but it means you're like it's smart.
Yeah, he needs to kidnap historical figures to pass 12th grade history. So I don't think he's a lawyer. I don't think he could pass.
But
the
he
bar.
might be a genius.
We're peeking a picture right now of Miranda, who, what's the actress's name?
Cynthia Nixon.
Yes, Cynthia
Cynthia Nixon.
Beautiful picture. That's must be more current. We have a Sex in the City wiki that we're gonna
Be referencing.
Sex in the Wiki. We'll be.
I feel like
referencing that.
not until after the episode. We just
Yeah.
have
Well, wait. Let's continue. Let's continue with this episode recap. So
Yep.
we meet all these people. We have the talking to camera, which is we know is a thing that happens now, and then we go. We get through that, and Carrie gives this premise of like, can you have sex like a man?
And then she tries it.
She also meets. She has lunch with that guy.
Her gay friend Stanley.
Who's a
And-
big character throughout and he's a talent agent.
he is. I'm excited he'll be back because I liked him. I
Stanley's
was like,
great.
oh, cool.
But he's a talent agent that only has one client who has a billboard in Times Square.
So
underwear
10
model.
10% of that, you're doing fine.
You're doing great.
But then she runs
Especially
into, I
back
believe,
then in New York, things had to be much cheaper.
she bounces into one of her ex-lovers, Kurt Harrington, I believe his name was.
Yeah, Kurt Harrington.
Kurt Harrington.
Also
Clearly-
smoking inside.
And smoking outside. Kurt was smoking outside. He was a stud.
I think he's probably smoking only on the outside. I bet on the inside things aren't well with Kurt.
Well, that was the whole thing. She was like, he was the best sex I had in my life, and she was just gonna go up, and her friend, talent agent, what's his name? I'm gonna
Stanley?
Stanley.
I think.
I don't know
Stanley
what his
was like,
last name
"Don't
is.
do this, don't do this." She goes up to him and is like, "My place, 3 p.m." Then they go there, they have some sex. He's down below, so I think he was
Yeah,
going down on her, right?
I think so. I think they were having sexual activity, but it was only she's receiving, he's giving.
Maybe they had sex and it's just like, oh, that finished. He's like, no,
Well, no,
it's
because he was
my turn.
disappointed.
Yeah, he was disappointed. I think that's all that happened.
He was unsatisfied with that.
So do you think they had intercourse?
I don't think
don't
so.
think so.
I think the only sexual activity that happened was he was pleasuring her, and then
With his
her-
mouth.
And I
with
think
his-
that was
we
her
don't
point.
know. We don't know what he was doing down there. The camera didn't show, which is the great thing about
Use some
cinema.
imagination, Kevin.
In the director's cut, there was clearly he was wiping his face.
I thought in the director's cut, Capote Duncan walks in and goes, "Had it," and walks out and says, "I gotta have sex tonight
Again.
Fucking lootly.
So he finishes up with her, and he's
And then
like,
he says,
"Hey,
"My turn."
it's my turn."
Yeah.
Very
Which,
romantic.
of course,
Yeah,
that would.
that's what everyone wants
That's
to
what
hear.
you say.
I-
John, you're
I
married.
turn.
That seems like a romantic thing.
My turn.
Watching that, I was simultaneous two things. I was like, interesting storyline, and also totally support her. Also, I mean, that's a bold move. That's intense, but that's kind of girls' lives, isn't that? Isn't that girls' lives having orgasms?
My turn.
Never, and guys all the time.
My turn.
So then, what I found interesting is, and we can get into this. So she had, for all intents and purposes, sex like a man. She got her pleasure.
She got her pleasure,
and
and then she was
left.
like, "I got to go back to work."
And she described it as she was leaving, and I took some notes here. She said it's the first time that she felt incredible and alive. I'm not sure if she said the first time, but she described
said,
that
"I did
feeling
feel incredible and
as
alive."
incredible and alive. Pretty interesting.
Yeah.
What are you guys' thoughts on that?
I mean,
I think you'd have to look into seeing. I think the show will explore this, but it's like you probably felt incredible in life, and then most guys that are having sex like men probably are having less fun than you think. So it's like, of course, that probably feels great then. In the long run, probably runs out of steam.
And I'm not trying to be a skipper here. If you guys catch my drift, but
What's a skipper?
you know,
we just watched the show, Kevin.
Oh, is he
Skipper's
the
a nice
nerd?
guy.
Is he the
He's
nerd?
the nerd.
But if I were having a rendezvous with a female companion, and I were just to get my pleasure, and then she were to say my turn, and I would just stand up and walk out, I wouldn't feel incredible and alive. I don't think that's inaccurate.
But
I think for most guys, but there's probably.
If I got a blowjob at 3 p.m. and then just went back to work, there would be a decent feeling, though.
Even if
I would be
the female rolled over and said, "My turn," and you just
walked
bailed?
out.
I wouldn't have done that. But.
You also got to think. I mean, listen. I know we have different jobs, but I'd have to go back to work. They'd be like, "Where have you been?" Like, I feel like I'd be all over the place.
Like, I was getting a blowjob, or were you eating? I don't. What's the?
Well, if the roles
I'm not
were
a vulgar
reversed, it was
person,
happening
but-
to me. I would. I don't know. I was trying to make. I was trying to make a joke that I would have to really explore my schedule. I have to lie to get out of work for that to happen. I'd smell like smoke in that scenario.
I feel like that's what a lot of this is going to be. Is like that couldn't really happen.
I guess though. Oh, sorry.
But no, I think the logistics of it, of course, are like that's crazy. You just have. Time on I guess she's a writer.
I guess she's a writer, so she can do, she's a writer. Who else is a writer? Truman Capote. Who else probably writes about his own sexual is Truman Capote not a writer?
Yeah, he's a writer.
He is a writer, but Capote Duncan, I'm sure he writes about his own sexual escapades
in his journal.
Truman Capote Esquire, writer.
But it's interesting you say that though, because I would feel bad if I did that. I wouldn't feel empowered. I'd feel terrible. But because that's happened to her so many times, do you think she's like, I feel good because I'm turning the tables. I'm flipping the script. I know what it's like to be able to walk out and do that. Like, I think it would have been a deeper thing to say, ooh, this actually feels bad. But in her scenario, she's like, these men don't feel bad. I feel great about doing that. But
that's setting off the whole premise of the show, which is just like, look, I'm gonna have sex like a man, or I'm gonna take back my sexuality. I'm gonna do this on my terms, without being desperate. Because some of the other characters deal with that too.
Yeah, but
all the characters.
I think every character, and I think it's worth exploring a little bit. Every character got exactly what they wanted in the show. If you look at the four main characters, you have Carrie, you have Miranda. You have Samantha and Charlotte, and I think it's interesting to think about what were they all after in that episode, and did they get it, and did it come to fruition? What was really interesting is Carrie, the arc of her story, it ended the exact same way that the Elizabeth, the girl that she wrote about, started. She got in a car, she met someone, hey, I think I see you before. He didn't actually say that, but like the beginning of this great romance where you don't have a chance for her to see if Mr. Big is a creep or not. It's just like the first initial spark, and she's like, it took her breath away. She felt like she was like under covers or couldn't sleep or whatever like that. But that's the exact same way that first girl probably felt.
Yeah.
Also, from a story point from Carrie, what's interesting is she says she feels amazing. I think this is when it happens. She walks out and says she feels empowered, and then she bumps into Mr. Big.
Right, yeah, exactly.
So there's a thing where it's like, so like she feels empowered and she's like trying to have sex like a man, but then she ends up running into the thing that's going to screw her up emotionally, and that she can't just walk away from things emotionless because she's going to like be like, oh, I feel empowered. I just by happenstance ran into the person that is going to be the one that's like sticks in my soul forever.
Yeah. And horrible lesson for children watching the episode to not get in cars with strangers. I mean, she just hops right in that automobile.
Completely.
I feel like that's one of those things. Imagine if people explained what Uber Pool was going to be, though, like 10 years ago. Now that's all it is.
You meet a stranger on the internet and you get in a car with them. But here's the thing. You don't even know the person driving.
Yeah. You don't know the driver. And
You'll be holding a mini computer in your hand, though, so you don't actually have to make eye contact or conversation with them. You can just scroll through your friends' pictures and just bite your tongue and wait for time to pass.
Okay, so I'm interested in what you said, that everyone got what they wanted.
Well,
Who else?
I mean, so Charlotte, she didn't want to have sex. She wanted to go out, have a nice evening, and have love.
Have love and also
Believe
have
in love.
interest, believe in love, have some romance. Romance.
Some romance. And she got that. She got that.
Until that guy hopped in the cab. We're jumping ahead in the time of the episode, but until that guy hopped in the cab with her and went back to Club Chaos, KAOS umlaut.
I thought I have written down before it happened, because I was like, I definitely was wondering, is Charlotte going to have sex?
And can we backtrack real quick? It wasn't just that guy, Cory. That was Capote.
Good God, I'm so sorry.
that was Mr. D.
That was Capote D.
Sorry, what were you saying, Kevin?
Yeah, sorry. My apologies, Capote.
We got sidetracked.
I just
Do you guys think the CD, the music, like, what you played music on CDs, was that named after Capote Duncan? After his initial, he is a revolutionary character. Did they name CDs after him?
He was around for everything. There's going to be a Forrest Gump movie, but it's just
about Capote Duncan.
Life is like a box of having sex tonight.
You never know what you're going to get.
I do. I'm getting it tonight.
Unless you go to chaos. All
right. So wait, what were you saying?
So I was wondering if Charlotte was going to have sex or not. I was like, I wonder if she'll just be like, I'll just do it for the night. And it's like, we'll have a good time. Or if she went, it was good TV, because she was like, I'm out of here. And then it was like romance. And it was like, I'm going to call you. And then he hops in. He's like, him just hopping in the cab and saying, I need to have sex tonight, obviously was a little over the top, which is fine for TV.
Not for Capote.
But I feel like if you were to do that in real life, I could imagine doing that in real life and not saying that, but just being like, I'd like to get, I'm
meeting up with some friends.
I'm meeting up with some friends.
Or like, to be honest, I had a great time, but I kind of want to, go out, meet with some
I have
friends.
had some dates like that I'm like, it ends at like 10:30 or something. I'm like, all right, bye. And then I'm like, guess what, Cory? Where are you at? And it's like, meet up with people.
And I'm there making out with Skipper on a wall.
I think
we haven't touched on Skipper yet, but yeah.
And you know what?
Well, that's the Miranda.
Even by the end of the entire series, I doubt we will. No, I'm kidding.
Well, yeah, I mean, so what is Miranda? Miranda is an asshole. First off, like,
she is.
That first date with Skipper, like, she is just. She is just.
And
coming at him hard.
Carrie knew that was going to happen. Carrie was like, she's going to hate him. She's going to get it all wrong, because Skipper's a really nice dude.
Mm-hmm.
How does their thing end up?
They end up making out.
Making out on a wall.
Making out on the wall outside of chaos.
That's it, though, and then it's over.
I imagine Skipper just wanted to get out of chaos. I don't feel like Skipper's fitting in well in chaos.
That's true. Yeah.
Listen, Skipper may be nice, but they go hard on. Like, he's looking at Mad TV. He has a Mad TV article, like the first time he talks to camera. He's just on his computer reading Mad TV.
Wait, really?
Oh yeah,
Not Mad TV, Mad Magazine.
Mad Magazine.
Yeah.
And-
The other guys are like making sales in their offices.
Yeah, it's literally Wolf of Wall Street.
pushing
was
up
bait.
weights.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
poor Skipper is just. The funny thing though is 20 years later. I mean, Skipper is
Skipper's won the
he's
game.
Elon Musk right now.
Yeah,
like
Skipper-
he took that knowledge and he invented Bitcoin, and he
And
is
SpaceX.
Yeah, and those guys are now his accountants.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I went to Comic-Con with Cory this past weekend though, and it's sort of like we run the world now, but it's also like but
You can't just say it.
there's some
You can't just.
it's like, look, our culture won, comic books win, but then there would be just 300-pound people charging their phone, like eating, lying on the ground at the Javits Center, and it was just like looking at two things. Like one, all of the things you watch like are the most popular, and also there's still like. And tell them about the sexual harassment policy.
Oh,
At Comic-Con.
There's a huge, which it honestly, it really makes sense. On the Comic-Con app, there's like panels, guests, entertainment, and then there's just a huge thing at the bottom that says sexual harassment sexual harassment policy, and it's a huge policy.
It's a
about,
bigger
like,
button than even the
that's
schedule.
great.
and it's like anti-stalking,
Obviously-
because when people are in cosplay, you got to think that like people. I was really impressed at Comic-Con sidebar. I was really impressed by. It is like a very open thing where it's like, hey, you're so-and-so, let's get a picture. And everyone's like, totally, like, everyone is so game to do that. But I can imagine so much weird sketchiness has gone down in the past where it's like,
Especially
hey,
because a lot of the characters that they're cosplaying are probably
they're
like
so-
in situations that are like, not great. They're probably like either getting like fighting or like getting tossed around.
right.
And so I bet some of these people see these individuals dressed up as those characters and want to either reenact it or approach them or touch them, and it's necessary.
Well, it's absolutely necessary, and it's great.
This is a great Skipper sidebar, guys.
This is good.
But it's like,
Real question.
It's funny
Would Skipper
watching
be at Comic-Con? Probably.
yeah, I mean, I guess you said Elon Musk, and I'm like, yeah, fat nerds. And it's like, that dude's going to literally invent the moon. So they're not the same people, but it is funny watching just like, I guess they're still nerds, but it's like, I don't know. I feel like the Skipper character, I feel like by this point maybe has a little more capital than they gave him in the pilot of this.
Yeah.
Socially.
Yeah.
sure.
Socially, things have upended. Well, I even thought this.
Is he in the rest of the series?
I don't know. I don't know. Socially, I think if you look like Girls, which just ended last season or this year, I guess, but Girls was kind of like
With the election of Donald Trump, girls are done.
correct. Exactly. Donald Trump has outlawed being a woman.
You mean the series?
The
right?
series Girls?
Yes,
Sorry,
yes.
the HBO series Girls was kind of, in some ways, sort of the new Sex and the City. You could argue that it's like an archetypal kind of thing, and it's focusing on like people have way less money in it. It's like struggling for younger girls. Guys tend to be these like more man boys. Even like they were the guy was like, you're in your mid-30s romp or whatever when those dudes were lifting weights.
Yeah.
And I was like, mid-30-year-olds don't look like that anymore. Mid-30-year-olds look like, you have a beard. Like you look like an older boy. That's like a stylish thing to be a mid-30-year-old.
Yeah.
I mean, not for
Do you
everyone.
think once again
but
that's just the circles that we are in, or
Very
is that,
possible.
Is like, 'cause
Totally
I take
possible.
I was down in Wall Street,
which we
today.
should all maybe say. Sorry, not interrupt. We should all say like we all three live in Brooklyn.
Mhm.
We none of us like work in finance. None of us have like alpha jobs. We
Right.
know people that do,
Right.
but we don't really run in that circle. So that could be
'Cause I was in Wall Street today, and I saw probably like a 24-year-old just power Wall Street guy. Suit, perfect tie, screaming on his phone in the subway, and so I think those people are still out there.
Oh, for
That's
sure.
true.
For sure. It's just a different, I guess, if a show as big and relevant and like literally wrote the script for what people think of in New York City for a whole generation, which Sex and the City is, I feel like that wouldn't be the main story that was told. Just from this episode was definitely like, oh, that's the dream of New York City from this time. And a huge archetype, which now is not as I don't know.
I do hope that is our main audience. I hope
Those people?
I hope like every finance office in the country, like the guys are just sitting around a water cooler talking about our podcast. That would make me really happy.
I would love that.
Did you listen to Bradshaw Boys? Because they went hard on us in the first episode.
They went
but
really hard on us, but somehow I got
I'd like to get a
in.
beer with them.
Then they kept on dropping Capote, and we were like, they know Capote?
They've really built the legend of Capote Duncan. It's the fanfic is out there. He's the world. It's such world building. Okay, so wait, where are we? Like in the episode at this point? Like I guess we can skip it. We go to chaos.
Well, what ends up happening is that Mr. Big's at the club.
Mm-hmm.
Samantha goes up to hit on him, and he's like, "No,
Oh, he
no
smoked
thanks."
Cohibas.
He bounces. Samantha ends up with Capote Duncan.
Of
sleeping
course.
with him.
No, incorrect. She ends up with. You're right.
Yeah,
Or was it Kurt? Who ends up
No,
with Kurt
she ends up with
Harrington?
Capote. No
You're
one
right.
ends up with Kurt Harrington.
Alone.
Kurt Harrington ends up alone. He got played. Carrie really played
is there
him.
some symbolism there? Is that how the women are feeling? Because if Carrie
think
was
Kurt-
if Carrie was acting like the man in that relationship, and Kurt was acting like the woman, is that where
Maybe.
they're at?
Because you got to think our first woman, Elizabeth, the British woman, kind of got, as far as we know, got chucked and was alone.
She got Harrington.
She got Harrington. She didn't get Duncaned.
No.
Samantha got Duncaned. But
So Samantha ends up with
Samantha
Duncan.
ends up with Duncan. But even there's like a little hint of sadness with Samantha because Duncan gives her the line that Charlotte gave him. He was like, "I got to get up really early so you can't sleep over."
See, I thought she was like into
You thought?
that.
I thought
Yeah.
she. Maybe I'm too.
I mean, that's what she's looking
maybe I'm
for.
too
or
personally emotional.
maybe you're like
don't know.
meta, like looking in the layers, like maybe
I might
deep down.
I might be reading into it, but deep down, I feel like what makes Samantha interesting is like she has way more humanity than you would give her. You just think like, oh, whatever, she doesn't care. I feel like she's like strong enough to not care, but I feel like she really wants that. I don't know. I could be totally reading into it.
I know nothing about. Just know Samantha is the sexy character. Like from everyone's like, "Where's Samantha?"
How many different locations do you know where she's had sex throughout the city, though?
I think I always. I don't know if I have a lot of Samantha information on the tour. I'll get the script up from the tour and we'll read
Oh
some
man,
from it. But
Can't wait to read it.
I do think that there seemed like a hint of sadness, but then also just like
Who cares?
this is what I wanted. But I'm sure someone could be like, that's not who Samantha. But then again, we're watching like not the fully formed characters yet that everyone ends up knowing. But at least for that, I feel like the direction was like, and let there be like just a little moment where because I saw that too, and I didn't expect that from what I've known through culture about Samantha.
Or maybe it wasn't even sadness. Maybe it was just like, all right, I get it. This is a no strings attached thing, and I'm down for that too.
Yeah.
And then that's the understanding.
Yeah.
And then so we covered that.
And then the big twist.
The big twist.
The big twist is Carrie leaves the club by herself, and then
Can't get a cab.
can't get a cab.
and that would be the worst thing. Walking home.
Yeah.
That's what she says.
And
Yeah.
is true. And you experience that when like if there's like a huge Uber surge or something now, because
I'm walking home tonight, and I'm looking forward to it.
I'm looking forward to walking home with you for some of those blocks.
Yeah.
Carrie, and then who pulls up in a Cadillac?
Mr. Big.
Mr. Big.
Mr. Big.
And by Mr. Big, we don't mean our Mr. Big, Capote Duncan. We mean the real Mr. Big, the
Christopher
actor
Noth.
Christopher Noth.
What a legend.
What a legend.
He is. He's a great character.
He started that great storytelling show, The Noth. Is that what it is? Is it The Noth?
Are we
Oh,
all
the
going
Noth.
as Mr. Big for Halloween this year?
Yes, we are now.
All three of us.
We're recording this in October, and I can't wait.
If that's just me putting on a suit, people will be like, "Are you Ron Howard?" I'll be like, "No, I'm Mr. Big. I have a suit on." They're like, "You just look like Ron Howard."
You can't do that. You look like Ron Howard as a kid in a too big suit.
No, I'm Mr. Big.
I was taking a lot of notes in the show, but so I didn't. Not sure if I noticed it all, but he was a big waver. Like he would always kind of like
He did a lot
was
of
like-
weird waves. Yeah,
Like that was is that his thing?
I guess it's like a weird, playful little like. It seems like a power move, but it's odd.
I think what we I'm in a relationship. Corey, you're in a relationship.
I'm in a
But
relationship.
Kevin's not.
John's married.
Yeah,
John's
I'm married.
I have a girlfriend.
And so what I think we should do is we should take some notes from some of these gentlemen and do some field testing. We'll get Kevin out there
Waving.
and we'll get him waving. We'll get him dropping some lines that we saw in Sex and the City and see if he's successful.
We could do a field piece.
We could do a field piece, do an audio field piece. I'll say this. I would love for this to happen. We just send Kevin out in situations like ordering dinner or going to a counter to buy a drink. And whenever anyone responds to you, your answer has to be, I gotta have sex tonight. Sorry, we were not on the same page.
I thought you were going to go abso-fucking-lutely. You went.
That would work. I went with my hero, Capote Duncan.
Wait, so anytime he buys anything, anytime anyone asks him a question at all, it's just abso-fucking-lutely?
I think that would work. I was going to say I have to
I'm
have
so
sex
into
tonight,
that.
but I think
we need to do that in our relationships too and report back.
It won't go well.
Honey, can you take out the trash? Abso-fucking-lutely.
Yeah, so but yeah, she ends up have we really described that moment with Big? We've said it a million times, but if you haven't watched the episode, you don't know what happens.
What's he answering? He rolls up, she gets in the cab, they talk, right?
Yeah.
And then he drops her off.
Well, he says the reason that you've never
Been in love.
No, he asks her if she's ever been in love.
Yeah.
And she says no.
And then she gets out
and asks him
if he's ever been in love. And then he answers
abso-fucking-lutely.
Which is amazing.
And it's not about a relationship. It's about them tasty cohibas.
He's just talking about smoking a tasty cohiba.
He's just got a thought bubble of those cohiba cigars.
Yeah.
Abso-fucking-lutely.
Love a cohiba.
It definitely gives him like an interesting angle of like, oh, I want to know more about this guy right off the bat. And from what I know about Sex and the City, we'll learn a lot more about him.
We'll learn a lot more of Mr. Big.
He is a cultural icon. He's up there with like Gandalf, Yoda, Mr. Big. I think he is. I mean, he is a force. Everyone knows who Mr. Big is. Or if I've heard people just be like, that's your Mr. Big.
Yeah. We didn't talk about this, but Mr. Big is referred to as the next Donald Trump.
Yeah, very interesting.
Very interesting.
In a very positive way.
Yeah. Like he's. Did they say he's into real estate? Samantha says something about how he's like the next Donald Trump.
Yeah, it says
when they're in chaos,
wealthy.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if she describes him at that point as handsome. Carrie did when she first ran into him.
Yeah.
Next Donald Trump, but younger.
Yeah.
That's just
so interesting.
Yeah. And then they also describe Samantha as someone who has like charisma and like the guts, like the way Ross Perot could run for president. Didn't they say that about Samantha?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which Kevin made the point, the way Ross Perot could run for president, you were like, that's what Donald Trump just did.
Yeah.
He had like the blind confidence to run for president and then won.
Yeah.
Which is something Ross Perot
and
couldn't
that
do.
was the joke with Ross Perot. It's like, oh, you're going to do it. Of course you'll lose.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
Let's wrap it up because we're at about an hour.
Yeah.
Oof. Yeah.
So
So much.
There's so much to talk about.
There's a lot to talk about.
We'll keep notes each week, and we can, maybe carry on. Carry on.
Ooh.
I feel like we can.
Why don't we each go and maybe give like a 30-second kind of closing thought?
Yeah.
I'll go first. So something that was kind of surprising to me is where women were at while that show was taped. It was taped in 1998, and I think it was a very important show culturally. It really helped women kind of move another step forward in their journey to becoming strong, independent, awesome people that they are.
Yeah.
And I feel like where we are in our political climate and our culture now is that they've kind of it feels like it's taken a step back, and that makes me really sad to think that in 1998 we were progressive and moving forward, and the show was kind of painting a picture of these powerful independent women, and now I'm not sure it's because we have these leaders in place or whatever it is, but it feels different. It feels like once again kind of women have been taken a step back, and that makes me sad.
Yeah.
Those are like my thoughts while watching that. I'm not sure.
Mine were New York feels like it's in a time capsule because it is. It's in a whole different place. Like you can smoke in places. It also is a different New York, like we said, than what we showed up to and what we live in now, and what I'm guessing we've ever really been involved with for the most part. And I think it's the same way that women were involved in New York then. At least these 4 characters, that they're chasing after these like powerful men, but clearly they're not happy about it. And I think the archetypes of the female characters I'm interested because they're older meaning like in their mid-30s. They're not like just out of college, and it's showing their struggles. And also I'm interested in the archetypes of positive males, because it seems like Skipper is kind of a positive male, but a total wimp. They're just like, and Big, Mr. Big is a positive male, but this weird mystery who also like smokes cigars and like won't talk to you. So I'm interested to see like what an interesting male
big
is
waiver
here.
too.
And just huge on the hand motions. And I really do feel like if I had to come away with like a huge final thought, I don't know. I mean, I feel like I could sum it up in 2 words and it would be Capote Duncan. Yeah, that's what I would end up.
He made an impact on all of us.
Oh yeah.
I think final thoughts. I enjoyed it. Immediately I understand why this show is significant, because I'm like, yeah, it was pretty easy to talk about this show for an hour because it hits on sex, it hits on relationships, it hits on the city that it's like we live here, but even if you don't, like the amount of people that are intrigued by New York City, and we're before the show, but after the show, I feel like this is the most iconic thing about New York City. But even before that, it was like, if there was a movie, it was like, oh my gosh, it's New York City has so much mystique and like history. And so I can just tell watching it, be like, oh yeah, I can tell why this captured the world's imagination by the end of it. And I was just in a few short lines, like seeing how all of them right off the bat are pretty fully formed characters. And I was just big surprised that Mr. Big was in the very first episode and was intriguing. And yeah, I was surprised at how much I enjoyed it and how little my like, I was planning on playing the devil's advocate after watching it more than I ended up being able to do, because I wouldn't be like, it doesn't hold up or whatever. And I was like, oh no, this is great. Yeah. So I was surprised at how enjoyable it was. So
awesome.
Well, we'll be back. We're gonna watch the next episode soon.
I have big news for our next episode.
Yeah,
I just thought of it and really, really excited to share it. So
for the next episode,
yes,
that's great. All right. Well, hey, thank you everyone for listening. We're looking forward to doing the next one. Did we all have a really great time? Absolutely.
I have to have sex tonight.
There we go. Capote Duncan.
The Bradshaw Boys stars Cory Cavan, John Sieber, and Kevin James Doyle. The show is produced by Jeremy L. Balin. For more information on the guys, check out their website at bradshawboys.com, on social media at The Bradshaw Boys, and if you see them in the street, tip your glass. Thanks for listening.